podcast is brought to you by Audible.com. Get a free audiobook download at www.audibletrial.com/airlinepilotguy. Over 100,000 titles to choose from for your iPhone, Android, Kindle, or MP3 player.
You're listening to the Airline Pilot Guy Show with Captain Jeff.
That's me. This is Airline Pilot Guy, episode number 102.
Flight 209er, you're clear for takeoff. Roger. LA, good morning. 123.9.
Roger. Request detected.
Hello, you're listening to the Airline Pilot Guy Show, the view from my side of the cockpit door. I'm Captain Jeff, your host, broadcasting live from Studio 929 in the Sheraton Hotel in Springfield, Massachusetts. In this episode, 767s with slats tearing off, gooses crashing through windscreens, jets stuck in snow, passenger riots, and much, much more. And, of course, your feedback, questions, and such. So get all settled in. Tray tables and seat backs in their upright and locked positions. Electronic devices powered on. Flight 102 is ready for pushback. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Airline Pilot Guy Show. As I mentioned, I'm Captain Jeff. I am a captain for a major U.S. legacy airline in the United States. Well, that's why I said U.S. And I am a line pilot, and I like to talk about aviation news, comment on it, and most importantly, answer your great questions and feedback. I am on my first day of a 4-day trip, and today is Tuesday, the 28th of January, and I'd hoped to start recording this. Oh, by the way, as I said, I'm a captain for a major U.S. airline, but I don't use the real airline name because I do not have permission to do that. I'm not an official spokesperson for my real airline, so I say that I fly for Acme Airlines. So I'm a proud line pilot for Acme. You could even say that I'm the chief pilot. And you could say I'm at the bottom of the seniority list at Acme Air. So I'm at the top and the bottom, if you know what I mean. Anyway. So this is my little podcast where we talk about aviation news and accidents, incidents, and other peripheral items, and mainly an audio downloadable podcast you can listen to on iTunes. You can go to my website, airlinepilotguy.com, and push the button to hit the play button and listen to it that way. A lot of you are watching me on YouTube, so if you want to sit down and waste a couple hours and watch some guy in a hotel room staring at his iPad video camera, well, it's his iPad camera, and listen to me blab on and on, well, you're more than welcome to do that too. Stitcher Radio, another place you can find me, and soon TuneIn Radio. I received an email from somebody over at TuneIn, which is a great app that I use a lot on my iPhone that allows you to tune in to radio streams, and now it looks like they're kind of getting more and more into the podcasting world, and so I've submitted the information necessary for me to be listed on their fine service. So, heck, I'm almost everywhere, except for on TV and real radio. But anyway, as I mentioned, I am on day one of a 4-day trip. Over the weekend, I'd hoped to pick up some flying, but I guess they had everything pretty well covered. I really couldn't pick up a normal rate flying. I had to try to get that extra overtime flying that pays double pay, and apparently, since I'd already flown a trip like that earlier in the month, they weren't handing out those kind of trips yet for people, dipping in the second time around like me. So I finally put in a request for just picking up a little turnaround, which I did yesterday. I got a call at 4:34 in the a.m. on Monday morning, and they said, "Hey, Jeff, we need you to come out and deadhead to Louisville, Kentucky, and up to Standard Field up there where UPS has their big operation, and we want you to ferry an airplane back, an airplane that had been undergoing maintenance all day yesterday, And I said, I'd be happy to do that. So that got me back home before noon. The bad part is, it was kind of in the middle of the night when they called me. Not quite the middle of the night, but, it was early. Didn't have a whole heck of a lot of sleep, but I did have my rest, my required rest. And so went up and did that, and then, got everything ready for this trip. Now, you may have heard by now, the time you're listening to this may be well into the future, but this is the day where the southeastern United States, well, south all the way from Texas, eastward along the Gulf Coast, all the way to Savannah, Charleston, Wilmington, North Carolina, hit by a very strong winter storm, snow, sleet, ice, all that kind of good stuff. I'm not sure exactly what's going to happen here because the event is just happening right now. And in fact, I'd hoped to start recording this podcast a little bit earlier, and by now I'd hoped to have been finished. But a little drama going on with my family at home in Atlanta. My daughter's high school is only about 3 miles from our house, but apparently they let them out early and didn't anticipate the snow to start falling as soon as it did. And I guess traffic is just a nightmare right now because, people at work looking out the window and go, oh, crud, it's already snowing. I need to get home. And then, of course, all the schools saying, oh, crud, it's snowing. We need to let these kids get home. And just a big mess. They said it's like the worst rush hour you've ever seen times 2. So I was a little concerned about it watching in my hotel room here, the Weather Channel. And so I called up my wife, and I could tell that she was not panicked, but I could tell that she was stressed out a bit. And I said, what's going on? And she said, well, Natalie, our youngest daughter, is, left the school. And mind you, again, it's only, 3 miles from our house, an hour and a half ago, and she's still not home. She's maybe 2/3 of the way home, if that. And traffic is just not moving at all. Something about a truck not being able to make it up the hill. For those of you who live in Canada and other places around the world, and even the northern United States are thinking, well, we're only talking about a little bit of snow, right, Jeff? And yeah, but this is the Southeast, and we're not really prepared for this kind of stuff. We don't have all the equipment that you have where you live to handle clearing the roads and all that kind of stuff. So I could tell my wife was a little concerned about our little one, 17 years old, our baby. And I guess she was concerned, my daughter, because the gas low light, the E, it was on E, and the little light, that comes on, the little gas pump icon is on, and she's thinking she's going to run out of gas and be stranded on the road. And so she made a strategic decision to make a U-turn because the traffic wasn't really moving very well that way. And, of course, it wasn't really moving very well the other way, so now she's going away from our... Well, anyway, you don't want to hear about the whole drama, but eventually I called her, talked her into pulling off into one of these little subdivisions and pulling off to the side and just, staying warm and waiting for her mom to retrieve her with one of our vehicles, which is a Jeep Liberty, has 4-wheel drive. My wife has never driven it with 4-wheel drive, so I had to explain to her how to, put it into 4-wheel drive and go over there and get her. And so I think that operation is almost complete. I'm expecting a text or a telephone call anytime now to let me know that my wife has my daughter in her car and they're on their way home. So that's the little drama going on. Kind of a helpless feeling. That's one of those things, and it's not just for we airline pilots and flight attendants and corporate pilots and stuff where our job takes us away from home. I'm sure that many of you listening are business people who do a lot of flying, and you have the same experience, that feeling of helplessness that when you're away from your home and your family and something is going on and you feel like you need to be there, but you're not. And of course, nowadays it's a lot better than it was. I mean, at least we have this modern technology. We have cell phones and text messaging and a lot more technology to help us out and feel like we can be there a little bit more, but we're not there. And so sometimes that's a little frustrating, but we're handling the situation. I think all the all the chicks will be in the nest, hopefully within a couple hours, and all will be well, and they'll hunker down for the night and try to stay warm, and hopefully the electricity will stay on at the house and everything will be okay. So that's our little bit of Nielsen family drama unfolding as we speak in Atlanta. And again, I know a lot of people are laughing, going, come on. I mean, Atlanta's getting like 1 or 2 inches of snow. Really, Jeff? Crisis? I know, but everything is relative, isn't it? Like when I go out to California and they have 30% humidity and they feel like they're sweltering. And they're going, oh, I can't stand this humidity. I'm about to die. I'm about to melt. And I'm thinking, really? 30%? This feels like the desert to me. So again, everything is relative. So let's see here. I'd like to talk about, well, should we do this first? Let's go over here and start playing this wonderful music that we all love to sing along with. The Coffee Fund. If you're interested in helping out and supporting the show, I have something called I Love Tea. I love the Java and it loves me. I know people are saying, stop singing, Jeff. I can't stand this part of the show. Because he always has to sing along. But I know a lot of you have written me and said, hey, I'm at the bank in line, or I'm at the store, or I'm driving down the road, and I'm singing that stupid Java Jive song. I just can't get it out of my head. I can't either. Okay, so the Coffee Fund. It's a way for you to support the Airline Pilot Guy show. And you can do that a couple of ways. The best way, of course, is just to go over to airlinepilotguy.com/coffee, or just go to the site and then you'll see the place to click for the Coffee Fund. So what is the Coffee Fund for? Well, it's for supplying me with that wonderful, hot, black, sometimes sweet elixir called coffee. And this is I fixed myself a cup of hotel room Starbucks coffee, and it was actually pretty good. It's all gone. And as I've mentioned before, you know, caffeine helps me stay alert and aware and keeps me awake, keeps me from nodding off in the cockpit. So it's a good thing. And so that's one of the things the Coffee Fund does. It supplies me a steady supply for my coffee addiction. It also, of course, helps with offsetting some of the costs of doing the podcast. Hosting fees, web serving fees, helps me to get new equipment to make this podcast better and better over time. So, a couple different ways that you can participate in the Coffee Fund if you desire. Now, if you're somebody out there who is a student, who is struggling, doesn't make a lot of money, and all your money goes into that piggy bank to pay for flying time, well, the Coffee Fund is not for you, ladies and gentlemen. Keep your money, spend it on yourselves. But if you have some extra money hanging around and you want to help support the show, that's the way to do it. Now, mentioned, I've been running the Patreon, or I have a Patreon page. I've been doing that for a few weeks, and it's really starting to take off. Thank you so much for everyone involved with that. So let me first thank those who are contributing the normal way by giving me a PayPal donation. And I'm going to head over here to this page. And I should probably put my glasses on so I can see the names and read them. I'd like to thank, since the last episode, those taking part in my classic Coffee Fund campaign are Justin, Alan, Steve, Christopher, Larry, and Philip. So thank you one and all for those I just mentioned, and all those who have contributed in the past to the Coffee Fund via PayPal. And then I was just mentioning the Patreon thing, which is it's like a Kickstarter fund, but for small content producers like myself, who it's a way for you to give us a certain amount per episode. And since our last show, we have Josh, Hideous First Officer Jake, Ben, and Aaron, and Asa. And thank you very, very much for all of you participating in Patreon. Now, Patreon's kind of cool because there are different levels. You can give me anywhere from $1 per episode to $20 or more per episode. And a couple of you are doing that, which is just awesome. And I've already met my first goal, and I have a couple more goals, fundraising goals to hit. But I'm well on my way, and I'm really, really excited about the Patreon.com page. And the cool thing about it is that for various levels of contribution, you have various access to me, and just contributing anything to Patreon gives you access to the patron-only feed. And I put out a thing. I try to put it out every day. I don't always get it out every day, but almost every day, something called the Captain's Log, where I talk about, could be just anything. So, again, another way to keep in, kind of see the back scenes, the behind-the-scenes stuff going on with the Airline Pilot Guy, if you're interested in that kind of thing. You don't have to watch that stuff or listen to it. Trust me. So that is it for the Coffee Fund. Again, thank you, everyone, for your very, very kind and generous contributions. Couldn't do it without you. All right. Now, let's go back to my notes here. And I wanted to talk about, I think I mentioned, yeah, I did. The last show I recorded in Baltimore, Maryland. And it was very, very cold in Baltimore. It wasn't snowing at the time. It had snowed. They had that big winter storm last week, earlier in the week. And I had set up this meetup at the Heavy Seas Brewing Company, or Heavy Seas Ale House. So I was trying to figure out how to get over there, and I talked to the concierge at the hotel and said, how do I get over there? And they said, well, you can walk. It's not that far. And I said, yeah, it's really, really cold, though. And, well, there's a bus. It's like a free bus that goes from, just right behind the hotel here, Pratt Street, I think. And you can take that past the Inner Harbor, and it gets you really, really close, within a few blocks of Heavy Seas Ale House. And I went, oh, and it's free. Yeah, okay. I'm a frugal pilot, so free is good. So I went out there, bundled up, put my my black overcoat on, and didn't have anything on my face or my ears, and I'm walking around out there seeing people I think the temperature was like 10 degrees or 12 degrees. It was really cold, and the wind was blowing. I don't know what the wind chill was, but it was darn cold for me. And I'm thinking, it probably would have been a good idea to have some kind of thing on my head, maybe some gloves, something to wrap around my mouth, because, it was cold air I was breathing. And so I'm waiting for this free bus to come along, and it's just not coming. And I'm thinking, I need to move because I'm really, really cold. So I started walking. And I'm kind of slipping and sliding. I don't have the proper footwear either for walking on snow and ice-covered roads and streets in Baltimore, Maryland. But I finally got to the Inner Harbor, and I was really, really starting to feel the effects of the cold weather. And I looked over and I saw that free bus, and so it was stopped. So I ran over there and jumped on the orange line, or whatever they call it, and rode that for a couple blocks just to kind of get warmed up. It wasn't warm on the bus, but it was definitely warmer than being outside. And then I got back off again, walked the couple extra blocks over to the Heavy Seas Ale House. So I walk into the ale house, and like nobody is in there. Like maybe one guy sitting at the bar. Now, mind you, it's 5 o'clock, a little after 5 o'clock. So, and it's, really cold outside. It's not, a great day for tourists to be visiting the Heavy Seas Ale House. And so the hostesses at the front, once you walk in, they say, may I help you? And I'm going, and they're looking at me like, is this guy like mentally challenged, or what's going on with this dude? And I said, I'm sorry, my mouth was so frozen, I could really not. It was like somebody had put a couple shots of Novocaine in my mouth. And you know how when you go to the dentist and you have the Novocaine on your lips, and you're trying to talk and you're drooling. I'm sure I was probably drooling too. And so I was kind of laughing and trying to communicate at the same time. And I kind of got out that I'm looking for some people, but I'm not really sure what they look like. and they're going, boy, this guy really is, there's something wrong with him. Maybe we should call the police. I said, can I look around to see if they're here? Of course, I'm not really sure who I'm looking for. And they said, sure. And so I looked around and I realized that, again, I'm pretty much the only person in there. And I said, well, I am expecting some people to come by and join me. And they went, okay, where do you want to sit? I said, oh, well, how about this big booth over here? So I got over there, started warming up. My mouth started thawing out, and I could actually start speaking normally. I apologized to the hostesses for my unusual behavior when I walked in. And eventually I see somebody walking through the door, and this gentleman whom I have met or just met for the first time, Will Cool. He has a cool last name, doesn't he? I mean, it's Cool, Kool. And he's in a like a leather bomber's jacket. You know, I'm thinking, this must be somebody coming to the meetup. And he was. And he said that his friend Brian from Baltimore, you've heard Brian send in feedback in the past, and John, a friend of Brian's and a friend of Will's, they're going to be on their way. But they actually went to the Heavy Seas Brewing Company, the actual the brewery out near the airport. They thought that's where I was going to be. And so, no, that's not where I was. And then they had a flat tire, or I think Brian did, so he had to change a tire in this really, really horribly cold weather. I'm sorry, Brian. Wow. Anyway, so eventually they made it, and then I see a guy walking along the street and about to come into the Heavy Seas Ale House, and that's Hillel, and I know what he looks like. I've met him before, and we've shared beer and a meal at Heavy Seas Brewing in the past. So he joined us. So it was Hillel and Brian from Baltimore and John and Will, and we all had a great time sharing stories about flying, enjoying the great beer at Heavy Seas, enjoying their great food as well. And thank you so much. The four of them split the big tab 4 ways, and they treated me to my crab cake and my beer, my ale. So thanks, you guys, for the treat. And it was such a great time. Had a blast meeting you all, and hope to do it again sometime in Baltimore. Apparently there are a lot of great places to go there. And I'd like to do this kind of thing more often in other places around the country. So stay tuned for that kind of stuff in the future. Now, one of the things that Will introduced me to was something from the, let's see, I'm trying to remember exactly what. It's a military singing group, and the name just escapes me right now. I don't have it in front of me, but I do have a little bit of a clip. He says, have you heard this song called the Co-Pilot song? And I went, no. And he goes, well, here, listen to it. And he had it on his phone. And then he sent me a link to this, so I'm going to play a little bit of it for you. I think it's a pretty funny song.
I'm the co-pilot, I sit on the right. I'm quick and courageous, I'm wonderfully bright. My job is remembering what the captain forgets. I never talk back, so I have no regrets. I'm just a co-pilot and a long way from home. I make out the flight plan and study the weather. I pull up the gear and I stand by to feather. I clean out his mailbox and file his reports and fly the old crate to the tune of his snort. I'm just a co-pilot
Snort.
and a long way from home. I treat him to coffee, I buy him his cokes.
It's not true.
I laugh at his corn and his horrible jokes.
That's true.
And once in a while, when his landings are rusty, I come through with, yes sir, sure is gusty.
Absolutely. There you go, the Co-Pilot song, and I'll have a link to the group that performed it in the show notes, so you can get your own copy as well. Actually, this is part of a medley. I think they also start singing about those magnificent men in their flying machines. And so thanks, Will, for sending the information about that clip. And I'm sure that the listeners enjoyed hearing that song. Now, that wasn't entirely... there were a lot of truths to that, of course. But the buying coffee for the captain and Cokes and stuff, never seen that happen. Well, actually, I take that back. I have had first officers, co-pilots, buy me coffee. And, of course, more often than not, I buy them coffee. So you kind of, if you're contributing to the coffee fund, in a way, indirectly, you're buying cups of coffee for my first officers as well. Think about that. So, very cute song. And, again, had a great time talking with all of you at Heavy Seas, and look forward to I'm going to interview Brian, John, and Will. They're involved in, I think they're all involved in the Civil Air Patrol in the Baltimore area, and I thought that might be an interesting subject for you, my viewers and listeners, to hear, learn about the Civil Air Patrol, or CAP. So look forward to that in a future episode. Okay. Boy, I have a lot of things to talk about before we start talking about the news. I'm already like 26 minutes into this darn thing. Oh, well. The couple of the podcasts that I like to listen to that are listeners of mine, and I believe some of these gentlemen were inspired by the Airline Pilot Guy and other great aviation podcasts out there like Stuck Mike, Aviation Careers, the Airplane Geeks, etc. And I've just stopped there because there are plenty of great podcasts out there. Extended, the Plane Crazy Down Under. I'm sure I'm going to forget somebody else's podcast, so I'm going to stop. But just go to iTunes, do a search for Aviation Podcast, and you're going to see a lot of fantastic podcasts out there. And they're all a little bit different flavor than this one. Okay, but of those that have been kind of inspired by mine and other aviation podcasts and are relatively new are the Plane Talking UK podcast, and that's planetalkinguk.com with Carlos and Simon. They just put out episode number 9. Carlos talks about his recent trip to the Middle East and some of the airplanes that he had a chance to ride on and his impressions of them. The Airbus Super Jumbo 380, the Airbus 330, although he had hoped to fly on the Dreamliner, but that didn't pan out, and some other airplanes and his experiences on his trip. And then they talk about news in the industry, as I do, and with a slant. They're in the UK. You probably picked that up. Have great English accents. And Simon, his expertise is in military aviation. And he talks about military-related stuff. And also they both talk about air shows. And I guess the air show circuit will be starting up toward the end of May in the UK. And so if you're interested in any or all of that stuff, and even if you're not, it's just entertaining to listen to these two talk about planes in the UK. So again, check out Plane Talking UK with Carlos and Simon, just putting out episode number 9. And by the way, guys, I've been meaning to send you some audio feedback, and I'm hoping to do that on this trip. So episode 10, hopefully you'll have some feedback from Captain Jeff. Okay, another one that you remember me talking about, Garrett Easley, who just got his commercial license, I think, in November. He had a little bit of a break from episode number 4 and his latest episode 5. He took a few months off and the holidays and working on his license and everything else. And he's working for a skydiving outfit, flying their airplane. And he's talking about how crazy these skydivers are. And, I mean, you'd have to be crazy, right, to jump out of a perfectly good airplane? A perfectly good airplane? There we go. So check out Garrett Easley's My Pilot Chronicles podcast, and that's at mypilotchronicles.com. Again, he just put out episode 5. And somebody else just released episode 5. Chris Turk, he's a first officer for a regional airline, also works in their training department, and he's trucking along, putting out regular episodes of his podcast, which is called Flap Operator. And you can check out his new website, flapoperator.com, and you can find his show, as well as these others that I've just mentioned, on iTunes. So support them, listen to them, send them some feedback. We're all in this together, right? This wonderful world of aviation podcasting. So that is it. And now it is time for me to play this bumper because I forgot to do it last week. So here we go. Okay, an update on the incident that we talked about several episodes ago. The Canadian pilot who was ostensibly flying from, let's see, somewhere in Canada. I don't remember exactly where now. To, well, you know what? Let me read the article. It's right here in front of me. He was supposed to travel 30 minutes from Windsor, there we go, to Pelly Island in Lake Michigan, and it's like a 30-minute flight. He apparently crossed the border undetected and flew south, and then circled the Nashville airport for several hours before crashing on the runway, and that happened at the end of October of last year. And you'll recall that the charred remains of the plane and this gentleman were not detected until 8:45 a.m. on October 29th, when a pilot spotted the debris and reported it to airport officials. The runway had last been checked at 2 a.m. And they've done an autopsy on the 45-year-old Michael Callan, and apparently he had a wee bit to drink. Let's see. Callan suffered multiple fractures and massive internal injuries. His blood alcohol level was 0.081, just over Tennessee's limit of 0.08. And I'm assuming the article's talking about the Tennessee limit. I think they're probably talking about the driving while under the influence limit, blood alcohol level limit of 0.08. That's pretty high, I think. I don't know. Anyway, the other interesting thing, the autopsy also revealed that the crash was pretty violent. A battery is embedded beneath the skin of the upper right arm. It continues. The mystery of the case deepened when law enforcement officials learned that Callan had listed Taylor Swift as his next of kin. Swift's publicist said the singer did not know Callan, and no other evidence has emerged that the two had any connection at all. So kind of interesting. I'm not sure what that guy was doing, but apparently it was intentional for him to head down to Nashville and visit his next of kin, air quotes. Another update, you remember we talked about the Canadair CL-600 business jet that crashed at Aspen just a little while ago, and one person was killed and two injured while attempting to land at the airport. And apparently, at the time there was a very high tailwind, and video was released. There were 5 cameras, infrared cameras, that showed from various angles the airplane coming in and the subsequent crash. And what is evident, at least to me, just looking at these raw videos, is that the rate of descent, the sink rate, was very, very high. Not clear from just looking at these infrared video images whether or not the pilot flying was attempting to do a go-around after they touched down, or if they just hit very hard and ended up doing a balloon and then just basically losing control of the jet during the balloon. It appears that the engines are producing a lot of thrust at that point because, again, these are infrared images, so you can see the heat signature of the engines. I can't, I'm not an expert on infrared videography, so I don't know if that means that they were just at idle or if they were really, had a lot of thrust in to attempt to go around. But it's pretty, in a negative way, pretty impressive footage of the crash and the subsequent second impact with the runway, and then of course it just blew up, and pretty sad case there. So I'll have a link to these video that from the 5 different camera angles in the show notes. You should take a look at it. It's pretty interesting, pretty impressive. Okay, there's that. How about this happened actually before I recorded the last podcast, the 21st of January. A 767 operated by Delta Airlines was heading down to Buenos Aires, Argentina, and they were coming in for landing. They were on approach when the aircraft encountered severe turbulence, prompting the crew to initiate a go-around at about 4,500 feet MSL. During that time, a slat departed the aircraft's right-hand wing. The crew diverted to Montevideo in Uruguay for a safe landing about 30 minutes later. They show the METAR for the Buenos Aires Airport. At the time, there were thunderstorms, rain showers, a few clouds, 3,000, 4,000, a few cumulonimbus, 5,000 broken, temperature 26 Celsius, and winds were pretty high, 250 at 35 knots, and the other observation bracketed around the time they were coming in for an approach, 250, 32 gusting to 48. So the winds were pretty darn high. Let's see, what runway were they trying to land on? Does it say? Man, I don't see it in the article. No, I don't see it. But the winds were, I guess because of the thunderstorms, were varying between 210 and 280 degrees, and again, 32 gusting 48 knots from 250. And so it didn't look like a very pleasant day, needless to say, in Buenos Aires while they were doing the approach. There's a picture here in the Aviation Herald article from the right-hand window over wing area where you can see just to the outboard of the number 2 engine, the slat panel completely gone. It is definitely missing. It came off. So whatever it was that they hit, that turbulence or updraft or whatever it was pretty severe to tear the slat off the wing. Interestingly, in the notes, the people are talking about the incident, and they said that several Argentine blogs and media are reporting that there is more to this story than that should come out if the government were to release the communication transcripts between Delta Flight 101 and EZE Control. And apparently the captain, I'm not going to name him, had advised the passengers that it was going to be a pretty bumpy approach, and the cabin had been secured. And apparently the captain was pretty unhappy with the approach controllers because apparently they were giving him information about the weather which was not jiving with what he was experiencing. So I'm hoping we're going to learn more from this incident as the facts are released. Let's see. Reports indicate that EZE Control was providing erroneous weather information, wind direction, speed, and visibility to the flight. The captain challenged control, indicating that his instruments were telling a different story. Soon after the go-around was initiated, Echo Z Echo Control came back and apologized for the erroneous info. On climb-out, the captain's last communication was that he called control. Oh, I can't say that. some spicy language, let's just put it. So he was not very happy, and I don't blame him. So again, interesting incident, the slat coming off of the right wing of a Boeing 767-300 model. Oh, I'm glad I wasn't in there for that one. I have some audio for you. How about, let's see here. Let's listen to this one. Last week I was in Baltimore, and I'm not sure what day this was. It may have been right before, maybe during that snowstorm the day before I recorded the last episode. I'm not sure exactly when this was recorded and when this incident occurred. But I play it just to kind of give you some feel for what we have to go through sometimes after a big winter event, and maybe the runway conditions aren't perfect, and the aviation or airport authorities are doing their best to, clear up all the runways and taxiways, but sometimes, it's a work in progress, and you have to use extreme caution, we as airplane operators. And let's listen a little bit of this liveatc.net audio from American Flight 1277.
American 1277, you can continue all the way to runway 10 to the lineup and wait. If you want to go right at Foxtrot 1 and around on Foxtrot, it's available, but I will tell you I do not think they've done much with the Foxtrot 1 intersection.
And Tower American 1277 is with the approach in Foxtrot 1 on 10.
1277, you continue runway 10, line up and wait. If you'd like to use Foxtrot 1 to Foxtrot to get the position, that's okay, but I do not think they've done anything with the Foxtrot 1 intersection.
Okay, so it's either 180 on the runway or Foxtrot 1.
That is correct.
Okay, so at the end of runway 10, they're traveling down runway 2810, but they're kind of heading the 28 direction to get into position for takeoff on runway 10, because I guess the taxiways weren't cleared at the time. And toward the very, very end of the runway there's a Foxtrot 1 and Foxtrot. And so he's giving him the option to use Foxtrot 1 to Foxtrot to get into position onto the runway, or to stay on the runway and do a 180-degree turn to get lined up for takeoff on runway 10. Now, both of those were probably not great situations, because when they clear runways, they don't clear it all the way from side to side. They clear the middle area and the center line area, a certain number of feet left and right of the center line, and then as you get closer to the edges of the runway, it's not quite as well cleared of snow and ice and everything else. So, we as captains, look at doing a 180-degree turn on a runway and think, if there's something else, especially in those conditions, if there's some other way to do this that might actually be safer, well, let's do that. And so they're probably looking over there at that taxiway, Foxtrot 1, thinking that might be the better way to get, the better angle to get this airplane lined up for takeoff. And something to keep in mind, runway 1028, I believe, is a 200-foot wide runway. So, maybe a 180-degree turn for the 737 wouldn't have been that big of a deal. But again, I wasn't there. I don't know what the conditions were. I don't know how much of the runway center line and the threshold area was cleared of snow and ice and stuff. So let's continue listening to this recording.
And for American 1277, we're going to go down to Fox and use a little portion of Fox to turn it around, okay?
American 1277, very good. Runway 10, you are cleared for takeoff. The wind is 010 at 15.
Okay, so he's decided I'm not going to use Foxtrot 1 to Foxtrot. I'm just going to go over there and use a little bit of that taxiway at the very end to kind of give myself more of a radius for making this turn, to turn completely around and take off.
Okay, American 1277, understand we're clear to go and we can turn around. Thank you.
Normal Tower, port 11.
Port 11, Bomber.
Yes, sir, I'm holding short of 33 left at Delta. I'd like to check 33 left, please.
That's one of the operations vehicles trying to do an inspection of runway 33 left.
Port 11, the approach end of runway 33 left. You cleared onto runway 33 left. Hold short of runway 1028, landing and departing track.
413, understand. Proceeding onto 33 left, will be holding short of 10. Port 11, thanks.
At ground, we can't make the turn here, 1277.
Turn right, bring back. So, what's your status?
Your status is going to be a shutdown runway, and somebody's going to have to come tow us out of here.
Oh, that's not good. Apparently they had gone over to the untreated Foxtrot to do that 180-degree turn, and the snow was a little bit deeper, or maybe the traction was not very good, and basically they got stuck in the snow, and they shut down the runway. So not a lot of fun this time of year sometimes going into some of these places and trying to deal with the conditions. And just a reminder to everybody out there to be careful, slow everything down, assume that you don't have very good traction, and try to use prepared surfaces as much as you can. And I really feel for those guys. Okay, and some more audio from liveatc.net. And I edited this down. I mean, the original recording was much, much longer, and it took out a lot of extraneous communications and some dead spots or silent passages. And so I kind of compressed the whole thing together. So this is not real time, but this gives you an idea of what can happen to you, regardless of whether you're flying an airliner or general aviation airplane like a Bonanza.
Tower, we have a little issue here. We're having a hard time getting our gear down.
Is that for Bonanza 15 Whiskey?
And this is at Addison Airport in just north of Dallas.
Affirmative.
Bonanza 15 Whiskey, Roger. And runway 15 cleared, low approach. We'll take a look at it. Is it, you're not getting any green lights at all?
Negative, no green light.
Cherokee 965, taxi pass, hold short line, contact ground point 6, and have a good morning.
Okay, point 6 for 965, thanks. Okay, we hear it start down, but no green.
Bonanza 15 Whiskey, Roger. We'll take a look at it as you go by and tell you what it looks like from our perspective.
All right, great, thanks.
Bonanza 15 Whiskey, it appears something's hanging off your main gear. Don't worry about it. We're going to get equipment out here and everything you need, but you've got a tow bar hanging off your front nose wheel.
A tow bar?
Bonanza 15 Whiskey, affirmative. You've got a tow bar hanging down on that thing. So if you want, go out, fly out to the east, circle for a little while, and we'll get everything we need for you.
All right, thank you.
I love that. A tow bar? Affirmative. You got a tow bar hanging from that thing.
Ouch. Does it look like our rear gear might be down?
I want to replay that one again. That's somebody else on the frequency. Just heard the exchange between the tower controller and the Bonanza regarding the tow bar.
Does it look like our rear gear might be down?
Bonanza 15 Whiskey, I'll fly out to the east, circle for a little while, and we'll get everything we need for you.
Here's the other person.
All right, thank you. Ouch. Does it look like our rear gear might be down?
Bonanza 15 Whiskey, all three of them were
I would have said the same thing if I were on frequency. Ouch.
down. I'm not quite sure of the position of them as far as if they're locked or not, because I was a little distracted by that main gear, or the nose gear. So do you want to do one more low approach?
Yeah, if you don't mind, I would.
Bonanza 15 Whiskey, Roger. The airspace is yours. We're going to keep it clear. You're going to be the only thing we're going to be working. And go ahead and enter the pattern and make another low approach runway 15.
Roger, thank you.
Bonanza 15 Whiskey, we do have the equipment on the way. And if you could just say people on board and how much fuel you have remaining in time.
Okay, we're half tanks, and we're half tanks, and there's 2 people on board.
Bonanza 15 Whiskey, Roger. Thank you.
Ma'am, This is 15 Whiskey. We're going to come back around and ask you to look at the rear mains to see if they look like they're down.
Bonanza 15 Whiskey. Affirmative, definitely. We'll give you as much as a report as we can on that.
All right, thanks a lot.
Bonanza 15 Whiskey. First report, looking at it from the front, the mains are canted inwards. Is that part normal?
Probably not all the way down. We might try to cycle it again.
Bonanza 15 Whiskey, Roger. And like I said, airspace is yours, so you'll be able to go out there and do whatever you need in circle. And just let us, let me give you a report right now, just a second. Bonanza 15 Whiskey, from the side view, they appear to be down. But like I said, from the front and the back, they're slightly canted in. I know some aircraft that's normal. I'm just not quite sure on that model of Bonanza.
Well, let's keep our fingers crossed that it's normal.
Bonanza 15 Whiskey, Roger. We do have the equipment on the way, so definitely let us get, they're almost in position. Did you want to land on this, or do you want to go out and burn off some fuel first?
We're going to burn out just a little bit of fuel, but go ahead and have some other people take off and land just fine. We're okay for a while. Let's just check a few things out.
Bonanza 15 Whiskey, I appreciate that. We do have some inbounds. I don't know if anybody actually wants to take off, because if you do end up on the runway, we might be closed down for a little while. So let me tell approach that they can bring in some of the arrivals. So if you want to go over there to the east side of the airport, within about maybe 4 or 5 miles, and either 2,000 feet or below.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you very much.
At the tower, this is Sky 50011. We're at the end of the runway 15, and we're ready to take off. Bonanza's out burning out fuel. From where we were, it looked like the landing gear was canted in as well, so maybe not the main lockdown.
This is 011, Roger. And did you want to go ahead and take off, or do you want to go back to parking?
We're going to go ahead and take off. We're doing a cross-country out to the east, so, it should be a problem for us. 011.
This is 011, Roger. In that case, runway 15, cleared for takeoff.
Runway 15, clear for takeoff. 011. Thank you very much.
And citation 5 Papa Golf, traffic, 12 o'clock, 1 mile maneuvering. He climbed up a little bit. He's at 2,300 at Bonanza.
Okay, we're going to look for him. Thanks. 5 Papa Golf.
Bonanza 15 Whiskey, if you could descend just slightly by about 200 to 300 feet, traffic passing overhead, citation at 3,000.
Yes, ma'am. Sorry about that.
No problem.
We have the traffic. 5 Papa Golf.
Citation 5 Papa Golf, Roger. Just use caution. He's making circles. He's experiencing some gear issues right now, so he's just burning off some fuel. Bonanza 15 Whiskey, what airport did you take off from?
We departed from Perryton.
Bonanza 15 Whiskey, I'm sorry to keep on asking questions, but what's the 3-letter identifier for that?
Hey, it's no problem. We don't have anything else to do. It's Papa Yankee X-ray.
Thank you.
Addison Tower, we're going to make one more 360 out here and come back around in a left base for 15, if that's all right.
Bonanza 15 Whiskey, I've got 2 that are landing. One just now entering the midfield downwind, so if you can maybe plan on landing behind him, I'll keep you advised.
Sure. We're in no hurry, so if you want to land some people, just let us know.
Bonanza 15 Whiskey, it'll just be those 2. Sunday mornings is the slowest time around here, so nobody else is estimated in.
Well, it's about to get exciting, so just want to make your morning.
Thank you. I do appreciate it. I hope you have enough coffee.
Yes, ma'am.
Bonanza 15 Whiskey, if out of that turn you want to enter the left base to intercept a 2-mile final, that's approved.
All right, entering the left base now, 15 Whiskey.
Bonanza 15 Whiskey, your traffic is short final. Did you want to go ahead and land out of this now?
Yes, ma'am. 15 Whiskey.
Bonanza 15 Whiskey, number 2 behind Sport Cruiser short final, runway 15, cleared to land. Wind 200 at 4. We do have the emergency vehicle stationed in a couple places to the east side of the runway, and as soon as you land, they're going to proceed onto the runway to your location.
Roger, thank you. 15 Whiskey.
Bonanza 15 Whiskey, and just to tell you what we see on the tow bar, it is hanging straight down, and of course with the movement of the aircraft, that means the tow bar is canted slightly back as well. So as you land, you will feel the tow bar making contact with the runway initially, and then probably being slowly pushed back as you land further.
Great, thank you very much.
Wind 180 at 5.
All right, thank you. Hey, I think we're all right.
Most amazing thing I've ever seen.
Nope.
Okay, so a happy ending. Several things to say here. Number one, I'm sure that the pilot was going, a tow bar? Uh-oh. How is it that the tow bar is still attached to this airplane? And how did I taxi out the airplane and take off with the tow bar still attached? Now, it's not like one of these tow bars that you see on airliners, not a big giant thing. It would be very, very difficult to taxi and not notice that there's something on your nose wheel. However, the small tow bars that we have for general aviation airplanes, they're pretty lightweight, and I guess it's possible to not notice that you're taxiing around with one of these things still attached. So perhaps he's thinking to himself, maybe I didn't do a very good job with my pre-flight. Hopefully he did do a exterior pre-flight inspection. Perhaps he was distracted at the point where he would have tripped over the tow bar going around the prop in the front. I don't know. Again, I wasn't there. I don't know how big that tow bar is. Hindsight is 20/20, and it's always easier to be the Monday morning quarterback, right? So that's the first thing that comes to mind. He's probably thinking, oh my gosh, I'm probably going to be in trouble. I still have a tow bar on my airplane. And let's see here. Don't know if I should take that or not. I'm going to go ahead and decline that call. Sorry about that interruption. I'm kind of waiting for word from my wife and daughter regarding, the whole thing that's going on in Atlanta right now. The other thing I wanted to say about this whole thing is that I'm very, very impressed with the professionalism, the clarity, the calmness, the positivity of the tower controller, this young lady, or this lady, I don't know if she's a young lady or not, but this lady who was controlling at the time. Outstanding job. I think you'd agree with me. And what else did I want to say? Okay, somebody just left me a message. Anyway, a very interesting predicament that this guy was in. Everybody worked together. The traffic was not, it wasn't too busy at the time. So that's good. And it was a happy ending. Now, a little distracted here, I'm sorry. Need to hear this voicemail that was just left on my phone and make sure that my girls are okay in Atlanta. And I also made arrangements with my first officer to meet him downstairs in about 8 minutes. We're going to head up the street, Main Street, and get some Indian cuisine. And then I'll be back to finish up the news portion of the podcast. And then we'll start into the best part of the show, which is your feedback. So stay tuned. Don't go anywhere now. Okay? Be right back. Well, hello, everybody, and welcome back. Or welcome. Thank you for welcoming me back. Wow. Yeah, a little cold out there. Didn't have any beer or anything. Just water. Yeah, went to the Indian restaurant. Let's see, where's the menu? Hang on. Punjabi Tadka is the name of the restaurant on Main Street here in Springfield, Massachusetts. There, see? Great place if you ever find yourself in Springfield. I had the malai kofta and naan, and my co-pilot had the chicken tikka and naan, and it was wonderful, and I'm stuffed, and it's cold outside. Not quite as cold as it was in Baltimore last week, but a little chilly out there. Excuse me. So let's get on with the rest of the news, and then we'll head over to your feedback. So, did you see this? very, very interesting. A goose, a small airplane, high wing. I can't tell exactly what it is here. Does it say in the article? It was a Cessna 210 Centurion. Took off from LL-22 Brookeridge in Downers Grove, Illinois, December 28th, 2013. And they have a video here of them flying along. And here, let me play a little bit of the sound of this video. Flying along, and then boom. Wow. They hit a big Canadian goose. And the video shows it coming through the windscreen and entering inside the airplane. Oh, what a mess. That'll get your attention there. So, yeah, can you imagine hitting that thing at a speed 2 to 3 times the speed the Centurion is traveling? Yeah, not good. Could be catastrophic. So luckily here, it looks like nobody was injured. Okay, I just wanted to mention that. I'll have the link in the show notes. Definitely worth watching. And finally, I saw this on Aviation Herald, and I just wanted to mention it because this is just further evidence that you should always have your seatbelt fastened when you're not on an airplane, even if you're not flying around thunderstorms or no turbulence is forecast, etc. You never know when something like this could occur. So, Air Canada Airbus 320 near Thunder Bay on January 20th, wake turbulence encounter. Let's see, they were traveling along on the 23rd of January, and they were going from Toronto, Ontario to Winnipeg. Let's see, with 133 people on board, was en route at flight level 360 near Thunder Bay in 45 degrees crosswinds, when the crew reported the aircraft had unexpectedly and uncommandedly rolled left to 40 degrees of bank. The crew stabilized the aircraft and continued to Winnipeg for safe landing. The Canadian Transportation Safety Board reported that the aircraft was trailing Flight 121 from Toronto to Calgary, flown by a 777-300, with the required separation between the aircraft. The Airbus experienced wake turbulence from the Boeing. So it was a wake turbulence upset, and when your airplane goes from, wings level flight to 40 degrees like that, it gets your attention, especially if you happen to be sitting in the back without your seatbelt on, or if you're walking around, whatever. So, again, just be warned that these airplanes sometimes encounter wakes from other airplanes, and I think you're going to see more of this in the future because we're trying to pack more and more airplanes in the same airspace, and they're trying to get us to fly closer behind other airplanes, and it's just inevitable that we're going to experience more and more wake turbulence encounters. So just be warned. Okay. And let me make sure I've covered everything I wanted to talk about in the news section. I did. So let me go over here, play a little bit more music for you. Hopefully that wasn't too loud. It sounded pretty loud on my ears, though, so sorry about that. For you, the listeners of the Airline Pilot Guy Show, Audible is offering a free audiobook download with a free 30-day trial to give you the opportunity to check out their service. Let's see. I was looking through some of the possible free audiobooks that you could download during your audiobook trial at audible.com. And I found this one that I thought might be an interesting read. And the title of the book is In the Company of Heroes, the true story of Black Hawk pilot Michael Durant and the men who fought and fell at Mogadishu. And this was written by the pilot, the Black Hawk pilot, and narrated by the same Black Hawk pilot. Let's take a little listen. They have a little sample here.
I ran that morning, as I did on most mornings, with a bunch of guys from our 160th Special Operations Aviation Regiment, the U.S. Army's only Special Ops aviation unit that handles high-risk missions.
I'm going to try to
Once we were outside the
advance
Task Force
a little
Ranger
bit.
compound in D.C., as I'd done the year. You might be doing nothing for hours or even days, and then all of a sudden you'd be jumping through your ass to go out and fly a mission.
Ooh, I'm sorry. Didn't know he was going to use
After
language
my
like
run
that.
and a quick shower, I pulled on my Desert Flight coveralls and settled down in the shade of a small tree just outside the crumbling building that held the Joint Operations Center. As flight lead and a standardization instructor pilot, I was planning an aerial gunnery training mission for the next day. Somewhat like the old squadron leaders of earlier air power days, I was responsible for keeping my element razor sharp. That consisted of 4 Black Hawk assault helicopters, escorted by 1 search and rescue bird, and 2 AH-6 Little Bird gunships. Under the right conditions, the Black Hawk was capable of speeds up to 193 knots, but with our load of 18 Rangers and 4 crewmen on board, the best we could do was about 160. For gunnery practice, we'd be going out to a remote area, set out some
Okay,
old
so there you
tires as
go, a little
targets, and
sample
practice running fire.
of the book
Running those
In the
skills.
Company of Heroes, the true story of Black Hawk pilot Michael Durant and the men who fought and fell at Mogadishu in Somalia. So many of you listening remember that incident. And there you go. So a little sample. They're great. More than 100,000 audiobooks out there at audible.com for you to choose. If you are an Audible member and you listen to audiobooks and you have some aviation-related books that you would like to recommend to the listeners, please send feedback to me at feedback@airlinepilotguy.com. And in the subject line, if you'll put something about Audible recommendation, I'd appreciate it. All right. So let's go to the soundboard and play this.
Captain, incoming message.
Okay, feedback time, the mailbag. Let's go over here to the feedback section and start with this one from David W. McLees. Super Dave. Don't know if you got to see last night's episode of Mighty Planes on Smithsonian Channel, but it featured the Trump 757. The aircraft is one of a kind, no doubt, but the backstory really threw up some red flags for me. It may have been more of a staged reality for the sake of the show, but it sure seems or appears that the captain is tasked with way too many distractions. From the storyline, it pretty much has him serving in a director of ops role. I don't know if Trump operates the 757-200 under Part 121 or can operate it as simply as a corporate jet. I believe they operate under Part 135, regardless of the size of the airplane. Pretty sure about that. Of course, the TV documentary may have given the appearance of more than it is, but having the captain overseeing interior install, part traceability, personally spot cleaning the aircraft interior, arranging GSE, etc., sure would be a lot to add to safe flying, not to mention rest. It's not that the pilot should be above those tasks, it just seems like too many distractions. If you didn't see it and get the chance, check it out. I'm curious if you cringe as much as I did. Hope all is well with you and yours. Beautiful weather here in the Atlanta area. And that was, let's see, when was this he sent this? The 20th of January? Yeah. Yeah, it was nice weather on the 20th, David. Not today, though. This was the Martin Luther King holiday, Monday the 20th. So he said, if you're flying an approach over the east side over Loganville, feel free to buzz the house. I won't tell anyone. Yeah, right. So I did not see the Smithsonian series Mighty Planes on the Trump 757, but he does operate it as a private jet, beautiful airplane. And that is, as far as I know, the reality for most corporate pilots. And some people would look at that as a negative, and some people would look at it as a positive. I know I have corporate pilots listening to the show, and they kind of enjoy the the big picture of the whole operation, arranging for all those things that you mentioned in your email, David. Being more hands-on with the logistics of the operation and interfacing with the passenger or passengers more, and that's something that, and at least in the airline world, depending on the airline, of course, it can be very compartmentalized or departmentalized. For instance, at Acme, we have dispatchers, and they do all the fuel planning, flight planning, all that kind of stuff. And I, as the pilot, just show up and look at the flight plan and, see if I agree or not with the route of flight and other details of the flight, the fuel load and all that kind of stuff. And if I don't have a problem with it, which I normally don't, there's no communication necessary, even with the dispatcher. You have all the weather information and route of flight information and everything at your fingertips on the paperwork. And, it's just get in the airplane, do the pre-flight checklists, and operate the flight. It's like that. I don't worry about, who's going to come out and clean the airplane, if they've put the right kind of food on board for that particular segment, if there is a food service. Those are all handled by different departments. And so there is an advantage to that kind of thing where you can kind of concentrate on, doing your one most important job, which is flying the airplane. On the other hand, being involved, as I've mentioned before, in a smaller company, and being the pilot, operating the flight safely is, of course, the primary goal. But being involved in the other details is not uncommon at all, and I would say it's the rule, not the exception. So I don't think that they were blowing that out of proportion at all on that episode of Mighty Planes. I do look forward to watching the full episode one of these days. Unfortunately, my cable, I don't have cable. I have a Dish Network satellite service, and we don't have the Smithsonian channel, so I could, and it's not one of the ones that's available on online yet, anyway. So when it becomes available online, I'll be able to watch the full thing, and I'll let you know if I change my mind. So that's what I think about that, David. Thanks for your feedback. Daniel Matiz writes, "Hey, Captain Jeff, Happy New Year. I was listening to episode 100 regarding Nick's question about starting the engines with external pneumatic cart. Our company and Airbus itself, in the flight crew training manual, strongly recommends to start engine 2 first and then a crossbleed, simply because the air hose from the pneumatic cart is coupled to the aircraft belly really close to the engine 1 intake, so they don't want ground personnel getting too close to that big CFM engine when they proceed to disconnect the hose. Not a problem in the Mad Dog for sure. I'm guessing at Acme the 320 family has the same recommendation. I wonder if this recommendation applies for all of the wing-mounted commercial jets out there." Also, that was Faith Gibson singing on KJazz UK, KJazz Radio UK. Paul Rumsey, one of our listeners. He says, "I love it too. Anyway, great show. Looking forward to 101. Well, I put out 101, and I'm recording 102 right now. Yeah, he sent this to me a couple weeks ago. Well, the 20th. A little bit more than a week ago. So thank you, Daniel, for your feedback and clarification on procedures, start procedures at your company. Let's see. Stephen writes, "You answered a question I asked a couple weeks ago, and I wanted to ask another one that I was curious about. While listening to your 100th podcast, you talked about the plane being connected to a power source at the gate. When you're about to roll back and start the plane's engines, the passenger air conditioner fans stop and the lights flash. Is that because the power source is being disconnected from the plane at the gate, or you need a lot of energy to start the engines, if that makes sense? The second question is, how does a co-pilot learn to land in bad weather? Does the captain say to the co-pilot, you want to try landing in a heavy crosswind condition or bad weather? I would assume a co-pilot someday wants to become a captain and should have some experience in a rough landing condition. Thank you." Okay, good questions, both of them, Stephen. First of all, when you are pushing back from the gate, in most airplanes. Different airplanes handle this a little bit differently, but in general, you'll notice sometimes you'll hear dings and the lights will blink. Sometimes you'll notice that the air conditioning system stops working. You especially notice it on a very hot day when all of a sudden it starts getting quieter and it starts getting hot, like rapidly, because you're in an aluminum tube, or aluminium for people that live in parts of the world where you pronounce it that way. And it doesn't take long in the sunshine for the inside of an aluminum tube to heat up. And the reason why the air conditioning system is cut off is because they are using the source of the pneumatic air source, which is what is used to power the air conditioning packs. Of course, does not apply to the Boeing 787 Dreamliner. That's a different bird completely. But in most modern airliners, other than the 787, when it's engine start time, we turn off or redirect or divert the pneumatic air from the air conditioning packs to the engine to start getting the engine rolling and started. And then the flashing lights and the dings you may hear, depending on the airplane, are the electrical circuits, the solenoids, the breakers, and all that kind of stuff reconnecting and synchronizing the engine generators with the electrical system, etc. So that is what is happening. Let's see. The other question you asked, how does a co-pilot learn to land in bad weather? Well, in general, for instance, a regular trip, let's say this trip I'm doing right now has a total of 6 flights. We did 1 today, 2 tomorrow, 2 on Thursday, and 1 on Friday. So that means if you divide 6 by 2, you get 3. So 3 of the flights will be mine. Well, some people would argue that every flight is the captain's flight, and that is true. I mean, I'm responsible for everything on every flight. But as far as being the pilot flying, I will fly 3 of them, and my co-pilot will fly the other 3. And depending on the trip, if it's going in and out of a hub city, sometimes we do those like I'll take the first 2, you take the second 2, I'll take the third 2, you take the fourth 2, so that we're not always flying back to the hub city airport, or the co-pilot isn't always flying to the hub city airport. I feel a sneeze coming on. I lost it. Excuse me. Anyway, but if it's a trip like the one we're on now, we left Atlanta today and flew up to Bradley International for our first leg. Tomorrow we'll go from here to Detroit, then Detroit to Tampa, and then Thursday Tampa to Atlanta, Denver, and then 1 leg back from Denver on Friday. So we're not going in and out of. Wait a minute. Do we go through Atlanta on the 3rd day? Hang on. No. We go back through Detroit on Thursday on the way to Denver, and then finally back in Atlanta on Friday. So, in this case, just alternating flights is going to work just fine. So tomorrow, Tony will fly from, not the same Tony that was on episode 90 or whatever it was. He will fly from here to Detroit, and I'll fly the leg from Detroit to Tampa, and then he'll fly back to Detroit. I might swap that out just to kind of give him a chance to do something else, but you get the idea. We alternate. The co-pilot is flying half of the flights on a trip, so it's not like the co-pilot's sitting there the whole time and doing nothing but talking on the radio and flipping switches and pulling levers and putting the gear down and all that kind of stuff, and I'm flying the whole time. That's not the way it works at all. So that's the way first officers gain experience flying the airplane in all weather conditions. Gusty crosswinds, low visibility, low ceilings, unstable air approaches, that kind of thing. So hope that answers your question. Stephen. And by the way, I think in most cases this is true that when an airline hires a pilot, basically they are hiring a captain to be, or a captain in training. And they made that point very, very clear at Acme, that they were looking at us when we were being interviewed, not as somebody that was going to be a co-pilot, but they were looking at me as being somebody who would eventually be a captain. And I think that's pretty true in most airlines and probably in the corporate world as well. So, again, thanks for your feedback, Stephen. Let's see. Jesus Calderon writes, let's see. He is an air traffic controller from Barcelona Airport Control Tower in Catalonia. I'd like to tell you and your audience a little story related to pilots enhancing passengers' experience. A couple of years ago, I went with my recently married wife to Costa Rica, hopefully she was married to you, for our honeymoon. We flew with American Airlines from Barcelona to San Jose, Costa Rica, via Miami. The 767 that had us, that we flew to Miami came in really late, about 5 hours late due to technical problems. So we departed Barcelona with this delay. Oh, I guess the inbound came in late. So they left Barcelona with this 5-hour delay. Excuse me, having to make the night at Miami instead of just an airplane change, and thus losing our trip first day visit to Aratsu volcano in Costa Rica. Of course, we were not happy with American. 15 days after that, we had to make the journey back home. It looks like the day we left San Jose, the weather was exceptionally clear for the area, and for our amazement, the American 737 pilot, he says, I don't know if it was the captain or the first officer, made a PA while still on the ground before takeoff, telling us that on their way, that they would have an exceptionally nice view of the Aratsu volcano, and that on our way out, we were going to intentionally fly low and slow to overfly it again. As promised, the view was magnificent, and more important, without knowing, just because the pilots that day were nice enough, they gave back to my wife and I the opportunity that their same company had denied of seeing that nice volcano 15 days before. Congratulations on your really interesting podcast, and thanks for sharing your experience. Regards, Jesus. Well, thank you, Jesus, and I'm glad to hear positive stories instead of negative ones about passenger and customer experience. And it sounds like that 737 crew out of Costa Rica really made your day, made your entire trip. And it really goes a long way sometimes to do little things like that. And thanks, Jesus, for listening, and continue to provide feedback. Appreciate that. Let's see. Mitch writes, he absolutely loves the show. He's listening here in Hertfordshire, UK. It's great for an aspiring pilot such as myself to gain a wealth of knowledge on the aviation industry. Question. I have my assessment with CTC Aviation to become a commercial airline pilot coming up. A nerve-wracking time. What's the best piece of advice you have for an aspiring pilot? Keep up the great work. I wish you blue skies and safe flights. Thanks. And then he followed it on with another email, and because I replied to him and asked him a little bit more clarification about what it was that he was asking about. Was he asking about the check ride? Is that what he means by assessment, or do you mean an interview, a part of an interview process? And apparently CTC Aviation is a very large company, pilot training company over in the UK and I believe New Zealand. And in fact, I believe it may be the same company that, is it Sam in Down Under that went through the training program? Maybe it was this company. I don't know. But basically, it's one of those ab initio kind of programs where you start off as a cadet and you build up your ratings along the way. And if you have what it takes, and it sounds to me, based on what I read on the website, that 99% of the graduates from this from this company are hired by airlines, which is a very, very impressive statistic. So looks like a good company to get your training from. Not cheap, though. I was looking at some of the rates, and in U.S. dollars, that ab initio training program, I think it covers about 18 to 20 months worth of time, is about roughly $150,000 U.S. So, you make an investment in time and money, but if you can secure the financing, it sounds like to me that this is a really good way to try to get a job with one of the airlines in the world, and they have a list of the participating airlines that they work with. So getting back to your question, so I clarified that from Mitch, and he said, just wanted your advice, as every little piece of knowledge I can gain, I'm sure will add value to my assessment. I myself am a senior manager with a retailer with a team of 150 people, so I'm privileged enough to have a lot of experience for my age, and Mitch is only 23 years old, in interviewing people, so I'm confident I understand the parameters in which training companies desire. I plan to give everything up, as I got the bug for aviation in December when taking my first flying lesson in a Cessna 152, and had 3 lessons ever since. And then I was asking him about CTCwings.com, CTC Aviation. He said it's like the Harvard of aviation in the UK. They offer a wide array of training for pilots and offer a turnkey package to take cadets from zero flying experience to a frozen ATPL. CTC cadet placements are extremely competitive. Just one interviewee from 6 will get a placement in CTC, as they are considered in the UK to have the strongest connections with all the airlines who come scouting for cadets every year, as they know that CTC training goes above and beyond what is required as a minimum. And yeah, I looked through their curriculum and I was very impressed with it. He says, preferably your check ride advice and any general knowledge you can share with a young commercial pilot wannabe. And so he said some nice things about the podcast. Thank you, Mitch. I appreciate that. So let's see. I think he's going for his assessment on February 5th. So yes, I got this podcast out before your assessment. So I thought about it a little bit, looked at some articles online about advice for check rides, and I stumbled upon an article from Flying Magazine, and some of the editors of the Flying Magazine kind of gave their advice regarding check rides. And this, for instance, from Stephen Pope. Before I took the check ride for the commercial multi-engine rating a few months back, my instructor gave me some great advice. He told me perfection was not the standard by which I would be judged. Inspectors and designated pilot examiners follow the practical test standards, which spell out the tasks a pilot applicant must complete. As long as I stayed within acceptable tolerances, I should do fine, he said. Also, unlike the private check ride, the commercial check ride requires that special attention be paid to professionalism. After all, once you earn your commercial ticket, you can be paid to fly, and that carries with it a whole new level of responsibility. For me, professionalism meant acting and even dressing a certain way. I approached the test very much as I would a flight with a paying passenger. That included flying with a smoothness that wasn't expected of me during my private or instrument check rides. And it paid off. At one point during the test, the examiner actually thanked me for using the rudder properly. I also made a conscious choice not to allow my apprehension about being graded by an examiner to affect my performance. If I let my nervousness get the best of me, my chances of passing would only go down. I had to convince myself of the truth of this, but in the end, I approached the check ride in a more relaxed frame of mind, and that also boosted my confidence and helped me ace it. And another editor from Flying Magazine, Connie Sue White, writes, she was talking about her private pilot examination. An intricate layer of plain old nerves still remained. One of the keys for me was to not work myself into a tizzy, thinking everything on both the oral and practical had to be perfection. Seeing a common theme here. You know, you can't be perfect, and you can't expect yourself to be perfect. That isn't the mandate, and the practical test standards give tolerance limits for performance. The goal for the examiner was to see that I had the knowledge and skill to safely operate the aircraft. And if on short final it looked like I was going to botch the short field landing, I knew it would be the perfect time to demonstrate the go-around, just as it should be, and as my instructor, Chris Esposito, taught me. So if you want to read more about the editors at Flying Magazine and their tips for check rides, I'll have that link in the show notes. Also, I found an article talking about passing your, and I know you're not going for an FAA check ride, but I think that this applies to any check ride. And preparation is everything. That's the first thing. Days before your check ride, have your homework done early. Know what the practical test standards are inside and out, especially the suggested minimum altitudes for each required maneuver. Let's see. This may not apply to you, Mitch. Did you research your examiner? Have you talked to other pilots who might have gotten their license through him? You may be able to find out if there are certain aeronautical areas that the FAA examiner stresses more than others. Let's see. Is this your home airport you're taking the test? If not, you better make sure you take at least a few practice flights there. Know the runways, the taxiways, learn everything you possibly can beforehand, and arm yourself with that knowledge going into your flight test. So knowledge is power is what I'm getting from that. Get a good start. Not many people understand this, but your check ride starts the night before. Forgo studying. Getting a good night's sleep is way more important than anything you might cram into your head at the last minute. Wake refreshed, relaxed, and eat a solid breakfast. Think back to your flight training and try to remember the good days, your first solo, your sharpest maneuvers, and all the best landings you've ever made. Get yourself into a mental state of cool confidence. Being a bit nervous is normal, but remember that to have reached this point, you already know your stuff. And also remember, this is Jeff speaking, that examiner that's examining you, that's assessing you, he was once in your shoes. He was, at some point in his flying career, someone who had very little experience at all flying. So don't forget that they have not forgotten that. Have all your paperwork ready. Believe it or not, many pilots show up for their FAA check ride without all their identification or paperwork in order. So, okay, make sure you have everything you're supposed to have with you. Know your route if you're going to be flying a route. Know that you don't know everything. That's important. The oral part of your FAA flight exam is just as important as the flying portion, and you should certainly treat it as such. However, remember here that you're an aviation student, and the FAA examiner is more likely an experienced pilot or aviation professional. The examiner isn't expecting you to know everything, but he or she is looking for serious holes in your aeronautical knowledge. Don't give the examiner a reason to fail you by not knowing the basics. You should know the fundamentals of flight, inside and out. On the more complicated subjects, you should have identified your weaknesses and worked on strengthening them before arriving at your check ride. Giving one-word answers will demonstrate a lack of knowledge. Always try to elaborate when answering a question, but don't give false information or guess at the answers. You'll be asked situational and hypothetical questions as well. The instructor will not only be looking for the right answer, he'll be more interested in seeing if you know why your answer is correct. It's okay if you don't know everything, but it's not okay if you're showing the examiner a lack of having studied the material in your practical test standards. So it goes on with some other great advice. Use your checklists. Acknowledge your mistakes. So if you do make a mistake, acknowledge it, and don't be your own worst enemy and dwell on it. I've experienced that before. You do something and you botch it up, and you can't get over it. You can't believe that you botched it up, and you can't let go of it. And all that tends to do is make everything else go even worse. So you go out there, you do a maneuver, you know you screwed up the maneuver, forget about it, move on, and dazzle him with some other skill that you may have or knowledge you may have. Fly confidently and safely. So some great advice that I found, and again, I'll have some links to these articles in the show notes. And this from the CTC, I think it was from the CTC website. Phase 2, aptitude and interpersonal skills. They're talking about assessments and interviews. During the morning of your assessment, you will get the chance to assess us. We will deliver a detailed presentation on CTC Wings and CTC as a wider organization. This will give you the opportunity to ask any questions you may have about any aspect of the program, our partner airlines, and the placement opportunities available. You will then take part in various exercises designed to assess your interpersonal team skills through group discussion and aptitude using the world's leading pilot assessment tool, PILAPT, which is the Pilot Aptitude Test. And I'll have a link to that in the show notes. We will also test your numerical ability, so it is well worth your while practicing some mental arithmetic examples before you come along. So that's some great advice, and I'm sure, Mitch, you already read that and know that. And then the interview, those who successfully pass Phase 2 during the morning will be asked to stay on for the afternoon interview stage. The final phase of your selection process involves an interview with our selection team, which also provides an opportunity for you to ask any remaining questions you may have about the program. We haven't trained you to be a pilot yet, so we would not expect you to be able to answer technical questions. The interview focuses on you. Think about what sort of interpersonal skills an airline pilot should have, and be prepared to tell us about your experiences that demonstrate you have those skills. Remember to top up on your research, not just about the training program, but also what's going on in our industry and our partner airline news. So great advice from the CTC site itself. And I just wanted to, it reminded me of something when I was reading one of these things about, acknowledging your mistakes and not dwelling on them and, moving on. And sometimes that's easier said than done. But I do remember back in 1988, while interviewing with many different U.S. major airlines, one of the airlines for which I interviewed was U.S. Air in Pittsburgh. And one of the things that we had to do right off the bat was jump into a BAC 111 simulator. Have I told you the story before? I probably have. Over 100 episodes of Airline Pilot Guy. I've forgotten now what I've talked about, but just to recap, I made the mistake. Don't do this. Mitch, if you're listening to me, if you're there the day of your assessment or the day before and you are hearing something that is a little bit different than what you were trained, like, for instance, how to enter a holding pattern, and it's different from the way that you have been taught how to enter a holding pattern, and you're thinking, maybe it would be a good time for me to learn something new, like minutes before I jump into the simulator. So I learned how to, holding entry procedures a different way than I had learned before. And that involved actually using your hand, right hand for standard turns in the holding pattern and left hand for non-standard turns. And you did this up against the radiomagnetic indicator, and that's what would determine which way you would turn entering a holding pattern. And so I thought, that's pretty cool. Well, the BAC 111 simulator does not have electric trim, or the airplane didn't have electric trim, at least the one I flew, and had an old-fashioned trim wheel like you have in a Cessna 172. And it had been years since I'd flown an airplane with manual trim. So needless to say, I was flying that simulator airplane around with it out of trim. So I had my hand, a lot of pressure on the yoke, and I couldn't really let go of the yoke when he told me to proceed directly to the 310 radial, 10 DME fix, right-hand turns, hold southeast, blah, blah, blah. And so I was holding with all my might the control yoke because I wasn't trimming the airplane. And I used the incorrect hand on my radiomagnetic indicator to figure out which way I should enter the holding pattern. And then he gave me another one, gave me another chance. And then after I answered both of the questions, he said, okay, well, both of those were wrong. Turn left heading 310 degrees, descend, maintain 3,000 feet, blah, blah, blah. Oh, no. Well, I blew that. You know, now it doesn't really matter what I do in the simulator because this whole thing is over. This is just a free trip to Pittsburgh and some interview practice opportunities for me. So, but I wasn't finished with the simulator ride just yet. So one of the other things they mentioned for us not to do in this airplane, it was only a single queue flight director. And I thought, well, no problem. The airplane I'm flying right now in the Air Force doesn't have a flight director at all. But a single queue meant that you could either use it for vertical guidance or horizontal guidance. So as I'm being vectored for the ILS approach, I selected horizontal flight director guidance, not vertical. And so I intercept the localizer. Again, mind you, this whole thing is way out of trim. I'm slowing down. We're configuring the airplane. The glide slope is alive. The glide slope is coming down. My instructor seat filler sitting as my co-pilot says, glide slope's alive, 1 dot above or below. Okay, you're on the glide slope. You're 1 dot high. Glide slope is, full deflection. Yeah, I forgot to go down the glide slope. Realizing this, I thought to myself, oh, I better try to go get that glide slope. So I pushed the yoke forward. I remember now clearly looking back and sitting in the flight engineer position. I don't know if that airplane had a flight engineer or not, but that's where the simulator instructor was. And he was doing all the stuff and evaluating me and everything else. And I turned around and looked at him and said, hang on, we're going down. So I pushed the yoke forward. And I was hoping to myself as I was watching the very high rate of descent and the altitude winding down, I hoped to God that I was going to catch the glide slope before I slammed into the ground. And I did. I managed to re-intercept the glide slope. I got everything all nice and stabilized. I think I actually managed to trim the airplane up. And so we have our final configuration. And the last thing they warned us about not to do in this simulator was to pull the power off too early. And of course, I'm used to flying an airplane at that time, about 50 feet above the ground or whatever. That's when you pull the power back to idle. I couldn't, I'm still doing my normal habit patterns. We break out. I see the runway about 50 feet. I pulled the power back. And then I'm thinking to myself, after I've done that, oh, that's right. I'm not supposed to pull my power back. Too late now. So I'm holding it, trying to flare. And then right before the wheels touch down, I stalled the airplane like 6 inches off the runway and then brought it in. Actually, it was not a bad landing for a simulator landing, but I'm thinking to myself, let's see. I blew both holding pattern entries. I missed the glide slope and managed to recover from that one. And I did exactly what they told me not to do in the flare. And so I'm thinking, well, so much for my interview at this airline. And it was a 2-phase interview. That first process, the first visit up there, where you go through and you do the simulator, you take a battery of test written examinations. You go in and talk with the personnel folks, and at that time it happened to be the director of personnel at the airline, so it was like the big wig. And we had a debrief, of course, as well after the simulator. I noticed one thing, which was interesting. As I was hanging out outside of the place where you walk down to go to the simulator, the simulator evaluators were saying to people things like, great job, good luck, good job, nice job, a lot of positive things. I noticed what he said to me was, good luck, or is something not very positive. I'm thinking, well, so much for that. So much to my surprise, about a week later, I got a call from U.S. Air to schedule my second interview appointment. And I said to the lady on the line, I said, what? Are you sure? And she said, what? Nobody's ever asked me that before. I said, yeah. Make sure you look on that list again. Are you sure that I'm on your list? Because she said, why are you asking? Nobody's ever asked me that before. And I said, well, I didn't do a very good job in the simulator, and I'm very, very surprised that I'm on your list to come back for a second interview, which was their final interview. And she goes, nope, your name's on here, Jeff. So I went ahead and scheduled it. And, of course, between the time of my first interview and second interview, I was interviewed by Acme Air, and they hired me. So I eventually called back U.S. Air and said, thank you, but no thank you. But many people ask me, well, how is it that you ended up getting on their list for a second interview? And I said, I usually say that the only thing I can think of is that my demeanor during this moment of crisis, when everything was going to hell in a handbasket, I just kind of had the attitude, well, I'm going to get us out of this situation. Now, was it a very smart thing for me to do? No, not really. But I guess it was just my attitude during the debrief as well, explaining why I did what I did, acknowledging my mistakes of actually performing the maneuvers incorrectly, and my mistake of learning something new at the last moment that I shouldn't have done, and learning to live with it. And apparently they liked my attitude about it, I guess. I don't know. So, or maybe that head of personnel overruled everything and said, no, I like this guy. I'm going to bring him back for another interview. So I don't know. Whatever it was, it worked. So I know I'm spending a lot of time on this, but I know a lot of you listening are people who want to do this for a living. And, you have an interview ahead of you for an airline that you will eventually fly for. And so I think it's important to talk about advice regarding interviews. Now, Mitch said, he's interviewed a bunch of people. He is the boss of 150 people, etc. So maybe, Mitch, this is not advice for you, but I think it's important to state nonetheless. So I jotted down some things. This is actually not from an article. This is just stuff that I kind of came up with myself, and I thought about it a little bit. And my advice for an interview is, number one, look and dress like a professional. Your appearance is important. It's their first impression. Of course, now we're assuming you have all the minimum requirements to get an interview. You have all the flying time that you're supposed to have, the ratings you're supposed to have just to get into the door. So now they've invited you, they've scheduled you an interview for you, and now you're actually at the company, at the airline that you want to fly for. And so, so you should walk through the door and not have a little belch come out of you like that. Not a good thing. What you want to do is you want to look the part of a pilot. If you're looking at a pilot and you're thinking, that guy looks sharp, he's wearing a nice, neat uniform, he's wearing it the way he's supposed to be wearing his uniform, it's not all wrinkled and disheveled, his hair is neatly groomed, that's the way you should look when you go in for an interview. Of course, you're not going to be wearing a uniform. Oh, here, this is another bit of advice for you. Let's say you're flying for a regional airline and you're going for an interview at a major airline. I would highly recommend that you not walk into the interview wearing your current airline's uniform. I just think that's bad form myself. Now, some people would argue, well, I came in, I had to fly the jump seat, I'm between trips, I don't have a lot of time, I don't have time to change out of it, so hey, take it or leave it. Well, if I were the interviewer, I'd probably say, well, okay, I'll leave it, because you're telling me that you didn't have enough time to get a hotel room somewhere, or even find a room somewhere here to change into a suit. I don't know. That, to me, would be a red flag. So look nice, look professional, look neatly groomed. At the time that I interviewed back in the late 80s, the standard interview outfit or costume or whatever you want to call it was I think it was a 3-piece suit. That was the style at the time. Dark color, black or navy blue, maybe a dark gray. A tie, like, you'd think it really makes a difference, but everybody was wearing their power ties. They're bright red or dark red or something that exuded power. You want to come in there with that sense of confidence, not cockiness. There's a difference between being confident and being cocky. So, think about the way you look. I know that you younger people, a lot of you out there have tattoos and stuff. You know, I think that it would be a good idea that if you had a tattoo that was prominent somewhere, that you wore some kind of clothing to kind of, it's not that you're cheating or trying to cover something up, but you are really. But you don't know what they're going to think of having tattoos all over your body. So, and it may even be their policy not to have, you know, tattoos and that kind of thing. So think about these kind of things. So I already talked about the hair. If you have facial hair, make sure it's neatly groomed. Let's see. Number 2, act confident. And I jotted down here, you know, a firm handshake when you shake your interviewer's hand, but don't try to squeeze blood from the interviewer's hand. You know, you can be confident and manly and firm, but don't try to break the bones in the person's hand. You know what I'm talking about. You've had guys like shake your hand and you go, ah, like, what are you doing? You know, that's dumb. If it's a female interviewer, and maybe it's just me and I'm kind of, you know, old-fashioned and I think chivalry is not dead, allow her to offer her hand to you, and also stand up when your interviewer comes into the room. It shows proper respect. So just think about those kind of things. Number 3, knowledge about the company interviewing you. Okay, so when you go to XYZ Airlines, it wouldn't hurt. In fact, I think it would be very helpful if you knew something about XYZ Airlines. You knew something about their history. You know something about how big the company is. You know where their crew bases are. You have some idea of the airplanes that this company flies, etc. Don't be completely clueless. Know something. Just by the fact that you know something about that airline is going to give the impression to the interviewers that you actually think it's important to know something and be prepared. So when you ask questions, which I think it's important to do, you should ask questions. Don't ask a very, very obvious question. Ask something that, you know, maybe is not readily available in the resources that you looked through to learn something about the airline. I can't tell you how many times I ask somebody that works for, let's say, a fast food restaurant, oh, you know, where is this company headquartered? They just look at you with a blank look. They have no idea. They don't care. I just go there to flip the burgers, you know. So don't treat your airline that you're interviewing with as a fast food restaurant. And even if you do work for a fast food restaurant, I think it's important to know a little bit about the company you're working for. How do you find out information? You can go to that company's website, Aviation Week, Wall Street Journal, globalair.com, and you may have heard of this, Google, Google, or Bing if you prefer. 4, know their interview process. Knowledge is power. Get some gouge. That's Gouge. In my day, we all subscribed to the FAPA magazine, the Future Airline Professionals. Actually, I think at that time it was the Future Airline Pilots of America, and then I think they changed to Future Aviation Professionals of America. I don't even think they're in existence anymore. I think a couple dudes, one of them being Kit Darby, and what was the other guy's name? Len somebody or Les somebody? Anyway, they partnered together to form this company that provided information about all the different airlines out there, their salaries, their bases. They would give information about the training classes and how many were in the training class and what the qualifications, what the average time, flying time was for the people that got hired, what kind of ratings they had, etc. So it was all good gouge, good information about the airline to which you were applying, and that kind of helped you plan for the kind of ratings that you should have to get on with that particular company. So I have several different sources of information about learning about the interview process. For instance, aviationinterviews.com, willflyforfood.com. So I have 4 links here I'll put in the show notes. Number 5, questions asked by the interviewers. You're going to get human/experiential types of questions, and you're going to get technical questions. You know, they may ask you questions about the systems on the airplane that you fly presently. They may ask you about FAA regulations, how to brief an approach, maybe general questions about geography. Again, kind of know what the interviewer may ask you based on, you know, doing your research and finding some gouge on the interview process at XYZ Airlines. For instance, at one of the airlines I interviewed with, they say, Jeff, you know, I see that you flew cargo transports in the Air Force. You know, did you fly? What parts of the world did you fly to? And then, you know, they said, I see you were based on the West Coast, so that I would imagine you flew mostly in the Pacific. And I said, yes, I did. And they said something about, you ever flying to Guam? I said, yeah. Well, where is Guam in relation to the equator? Okay, so, you know, they ask questions like that to see if I had any clue about geography. And again, I don't think it's so much whether you get the answer correct or how you handle the question you're being asked, whether you know the answer to it or you don't know the answer to it and how you react to it. That, I think, is probably the most important part of an interview. But it wouldn't hurt to have some idea. Now, you don't want to over-prepare. You don't want to absorb so much gouge that you know the question that's going to be asked before it even comes out of their mouth. Then they're going to go, oh, this person is so prepared that all he knows is what we're going to ask him, and maybe they'll start asking other questions, you know, picking up on the fact that you already know this thing and it's all canned, and so they're going to throw a curveball at you and see how you handle that. So just be yourself. Go in, be relaxed as you can, as relaxed as you can. Answer the questions to the best of your ability. If you don't know the answer, don't blow, you know, air up their skirt or whatever the phrase is. Acknowledge the fact that, well, I'm not entirely sure I know the exact answer to this, but to the best of my knowledge, this is what I think. Something like that. Kind of the way I answer questions on this show. You know, when somebody asks me a question about something, I'm not going to, you know, blow smoke and make something up and hope that you think that I'm right about it, because, you know, it doesn't take a brain surgeon to follow up by going on the internet and seeing whether or not Captain Jeff was right about that or not. I'll readily acknowledge that I don't know everything, and that if you ask me something that I don't know, I'm going to ask others out there listening to the show to help me answer it, because I want to make sure that the correct information is given to you. I don't want to make up stuff, you know. So don't be so proud to think that you do know everything or that you should know everything. That's impossible. You can't know everything. So it's important to know what you don't know. Practical skills assessment in the simulator, I already talked about that. You know, just be as relaxed as you can. They don't expect you to be perfect. And there are some professional interview prep services if you want to go even further. And I have a couple URLs that I'll have in the show notes as well. So I hope that that gives you something to go with, Mitch, and others out there who are listening to me who want to get an interview with an airline so they can get their dream job. And I think, again, it's important to be yourself. Don't try to portray yourself as somebody you're not. Don't try to overanalyze what your interviewers are asking you or what they're trying to get from you. Just answer the questions. Be honest about your answer and whether or not you have the knowledge or you don't have the knowledge. Don't be too cool. You know, you still, you know, there's a range here. You don't want to be so laid back that, you know, they have to wake you up during the interview, and you don't want to be so uptight that, you know, that sweat is pouring out of every pore of your body and you can't even speak. You're so nervous. You know, there's something in between the two. You know, nice, you know, confident manner try to be yourself. That's the best thing I can tell you. Just be yourself and know that you're not going to know everything, and you can't be perfect. But you need to convince them that the person they're looking at is the person they want flying their airplanes. So if you have any advice about interviews that you can share with the rest of the listeners, then send it to feedback@airlinepilotguy.com. So Mitch, good luck with your assessment at CTC on February 5th. And we're all expecting you to write back and let us know how it went. Okay? All right. How are we doing on the time? Already over an hour on this one. Okay, let's keep going, Jeffrey. Wow. I could never get anywhere with this. This is from Mark Kavanaugh. He says, congratulations on your recent 100th episode. Thank you, Mark. Last week, he was flying U.S. Airways from Phoenix to Portland. It was on an Airbus A321. We were on our descent into Portland. We were still above 10,000 feet when the flight attendant announced that the captain has requested, everyone turn off all electronic devices as they were seeing interference in the cockpit. This seemed odd. Nobody complained, and people seemed to comply. When we had pushed back at Phoenix, small handheld electronics were allowed to be on for takeoff. I was surprised by this action, as I still had about 15 minutes left to listen to an APG episode. Since flight time is 2 hours and 20 minutes, I figured I could finish the episode in one sitting. Thanks. I was wondering, was there really interference, or was the pilot just being conservative because it was nighttime with low visibility due to fog, and the pilot just wanted to ensure the electronics had no potential outside influence? Any thoughts? If you're ever in Oregon, be sure to look me up, and I would treat you to an IPA from one of the 50-plus breweries in the Portland area. Thanks, Mark. Thank you, Mark, in Salem, Oregon. And I used to, in the old days, back when I flew the 727, used to have Portland, Oregon layovers all the time. And wow, what a great city for beer. Amazing craft brewing in the Portland, and just a beautiful city all around. The interference thing. Okay, well, Daniel Matiz flies Airbuses, and he mentioned that he's seen instances where electronic devices will somehow affect the is it fuel quantity or fuel temperature or something like that, some kind of a gauge in the cockpit that is affected by radiomagnetic interference from electronic devices. Perhaps that's it. Perhaps your suspicion that because of the nighttime conditions, low visibility approach, that this pilot wanted to make sure that there would be no outside influence that might cause the instruments to, read something erroneously. Could be that as well. I don't know. I have no idea exactly what that was all about. So again, maybe one of you or two of you or three of you Airbus pilots can chime in on that one. Thank you, Mark, for your offer for the IPA. I hope to be able to take you up on that sometime. Let's see. Nick Carson in Atlanta says, why does it take three machines, the GPU, the ASU, and the ACU, to do the job of the APU if the APU is out of order? For being so compact and still powering all the items on the plane, I would think external sources wouldn't be too big, nor so many. Let's see. Why the separate units? Well, because all the jetways have electrical power, so you already have that built in. So you might as well use electricity from the jetway if you have it. So that means that you don't have to have a device with electrical and external air. Another reason is that the external power is usually connected somewhere near the front of the airplane, whereas the external air for air starts are usually connected somewhere around midway back to maybe in the way, the very back of the airplane. So in other words, the physical separation between where you plug in electricity and external air for air starts are so far apart that it wouldn't be practical to have just one unit. Maybe the complexity of combining the units is such that they just find it easier to maintain these different units that have specialized purposes. I don't know. That's just some guesses. Nick continues, when an aircraft is parked for the night, does it have to be on its APU/GP ground power unit? No, it doesn't. In fact, sometimes, depending on the station, they just completely power it down. It makes sense, for instance, tonight in Springfield or at Bradley International, because it's going to be awfully cold at night, for them to keep some kind of power on the airplane and perhaps even an external conditioned air unit putting heat inside the airplane to prevent things from freezing up. That would make sense. Will they do that? I don't know. I hope so. But no, an airplane does not have to be. A lot of times they're powered down completely with nothing connected. Let's see. He continues, I noticed that some aircraft at airports at night push to remote stands, and yet some airports, they stay at the gate. Why would this be? Well, good question. A lot of times you have more airplanes spending the night at a particular airport than you have gates. And so they try to position airplanes at, in the gate area for the flights that are going to be leaving first in the morning. And then once that airplane is pushed back and is leaving, they drag the next airplane up from the remote stand to the gate position. So it's just their way of, juggling things around. Okay. Thank you, Nick, for your feedback. Hope that helped. Manuel writes, it took me a while to understand what you meant by Acme. So in my pursuit, I was able to find you on LinkedIn. I'm glad you've accepted my invite to join my network. You're welcome, sir. Acme is my airline of choice. I've flown close to 130,000 miles this year so far. Wow. And I still have a flight before this year ends. Oh, this is in December. Okay. Wow. Why do I have a different date on here? Huh. Okay. While the MD-88 and MD-90 are aging, they are among my favorite planes to fly domestically, and of course even more with his frequent flyer status. My background is electrical engineering and wireless communications. Add radio frequency, not entirely related to aviation. However, I have a great fascination with commercial aviation in general. While this will sound silly, it is true. I sometimes play MD-90 flight videos on YouTube, and the engine sound puts me to sleep when I'm too anxious. Huh. Interesting. A lot of people just listen to me, Manuel, and that puts them to sleep, especially women. Yes, Jeff putting women to sleep for many, many years with my voice. My dream job is to manage and lead operations in an airline or airport. I think it is incredible, all the work and coordination that goes into the operations aspect of an airline. My passion for that is just hard to describe in words. I will certainly enjoy listening to your advice and perspective on this. Is it too late for me to change careers? Will my engineering and project management experience in any way help? Let's see. I'm very proud of your podcast and how well you have managed and grown your career. If you add another hour or two on top of the 2 hours you already have, I will listen to it. Yeah, you're the only one, Manuel. It is hilarious every time the bird tweets, the dogs bark, and especially when someone upstairs flushes. It just makes the podcast informal and remind us at the end of the day, we all like to be at home. Yeah, that's true. No, you asked. I guess your question, all that, Manuel, is it too late to change careers? And I can't really answer it definitively. I mean, I don't know how old you are. I don't know what you mean by switching careers. Do you mean like getting into airline management? I think some people would say it's never too late. If you want to do what your passion is steering you toward, then go for it. But of course, there are practical things you have to think about. Obviously, you have to think about your compensation and providing for your family. So there are so many different variables that I cannot analyze for you. It's something that you have to decide for yourself. But if you're miserable in whatever career field you're in right now, some people would say it's never too late to change. I don't know. I think whatever your heart is telling you to do, Manuel, and also discussing this with your life partner, your spouse, and your family, and kind of assessing the impact it might have on that situation is definitely important. Thanks for your feedback, sir, and thanks for flying Acme. Hey, I have some audio feedback from Daniel. Here we go. Let's listen to what Daniel has to say to Captain Jeff.
Hey, Captain Jeff. This is Daniel Andrew from Greenville, South Carolina. I'm not sure if you remember me or not, but
yes,
we met. I think it was around your 84th episode or so. Did a layover in Greenville, and we went out to grab a bite, grab a beer, and kind of chat about your career that's so fascinating to so many people. Just want to congratulate you on 100 episodes of the Airline Pilot Guys show, and look forward to listening to 100 more episodes and seeing you again on your next stay in Greenville, South Carolina. So look forward to listening to more, and wishing you all the best. Thanks. Bye.
Well, thanks, Daniel. And of course, I remember that. You picked me up in your BMW, your white BMW. We went to that nice little German restaurant, and trying to remember what it was that we had. I don't remember that much, but it was good. I remember that. And the beer was excellent. And yeah, of course. I know I'm losing my mind, Daniel, but, not quite that quickly. By the way, I hope that this weather hasn't caused too much havoc for you. And and I think, the last time I was in Greenville, South Carolina was the last time the time that we met and you took me out to dinner at that German place. So yeah, sadly I haven't been to Greenville in a while. But look forward to being back again. And if I am, I'll give you a call. So thanks for your congratulatory remarks regarding my centennial, and thanks for listening. I do appreciate it. Let's see, Lewatan, writes, longtime follower, will re-up my coffee fund support. Well, thank you, sir. I recently came across an iOS app called Plane Finder HD that gives you a 3D live view of airspace over several airports around the world, one of which is Kilo Juliet Foxtrot Kilo, John F. Kennedy International. Coupling that with live ATC gives you a nice view of how planes arrive and are managed down to the ground. He said, I'm not trying to plug the app, but it leads to my question. I was watching and listening to an Alitalia A340 come down to the right of the airport and being guided down to eventually land 4 left. Alitalia was being followed by an Emirates Airbus 380. There were a lot of planes coming into land, and you could see the controller making them serpentine across the airspace to get them down in an orderly fashion. The strange thing was the controller had Alitalia and Emirates keep flying straight at one point where they would have taken a turn to stay on the approach, I presume to space things out. At that point, Alitalia was instructed to essentially make a circle so that he came around and behind Emirates, and the controller had Emirates turn in such a way to end up in front of Alitalia. The Alitalia pilot asked politely at that point what was the estimated time to arrival. In the space that opened up between Emirates and Alitalia, they had a couple more wide bodies turn in to the approach. Why do you think they did this? And I would think it would normally be first come, first serve. The Emirates pilot said nothing more than just follow the directions. Thanks and be well. Again, that was from Lewatan. And, that's a good question. I have no idea. Just off the top of my head, why they would resequence like that. Yeah, you're right. It's normally first come, first serve, unless for some reason, the Airbus 380 had requested expedited handling, maybe declaring some kind of a medical emergency, but that should have been obvious based on the radio calls. If nothing was said about that, I'm not sure. Could have been an issue with gate space on the ground. Maybe the controllers knew that at that time access to, or maybe the gate itself wasn't open for the Alitalia A340 flight. But again, that doesn't seem like it would be a good enough reason to, completely, alter the sequence like that. I don't know. You stumped me, Lewiton. I don't know the answer to this. Perhaps somebody out there, maybe one of my controllers listening, might have an idea of why that resequencing occurred. So I defer to them. I'll let you know, Lewiton, if I get an answer on that. Let's see. This is from SoCal Matt, Southern California Matt. Congrats on 100 successful episodes. Well, I'm not sure about that. I had a quick question regarding joining the Air Force. I'm a junior in high school and plan to work on my flight training throughout my college career, whether I decide to attend an aeronautical university or not. Upon doing research, I've found that it is difficult to be selected to attend pilot training for the Air Force. Therefore, I began doing research on how to separate myself from other candidates and found Air Force ROTC. Although it seems like a beneficial program, I've heard mixed opinions about it. Being an ex-Air Force officer, would you recommend this program to future recruits? I look forward to hearing your response. Clear skies and God bless, Matt. Well, Matt, everything depends on the timing of things. It depends on the school where the ROTC program is. I don't have any inside information at this point, whether you're better off going through ROTC or going through officer training school as I did. I can only tell you what happened at the time that I was considering joining the Air Force ROTC program at Auburn University back in the late 70s, early 80s. Many of the people that were my peers, my colleagues in the aviation management program were also involved in the Air Force ROTC program at the university, and many of them were pilot candidates. But I witnessed their frustration and angst when their pilot slot would somehow be taken away from them at a certain point, and then maybe a few months later receiving word that their pilot slot was re-awarded or appointed to them. And I saw this happening and maybe it was just at that time, I don't know, but I saw this happening a lot, and I thought to myself, do I want to do all the things necessary to take part in the ROTC program to find that at the end of it all, I'm not going to have a pilot slot? And to me, that was unsatisfactory. Now, that may not be a factor at all these days. I can tell you that the ROTC program is awesome. You learn a lot of things. You actually receive benefits. You receive sometimes scholarships and breaks on the cost of tuition. I don't know what all the rules are now and benefits are, but there are definitely benefits to it. It does require a little bit more of your involvement in things, in extracurricular type of activities that you wouldn't have to do if you were not in an ROTC program. There are certain standards that you have to comply with as far as grooming standards, your haircut, etc. You do have to do drills and that kind of thing occasionally. But the bottom line is that you go through the ROTC program, you graduate with your degree, and you graduate as a commissioned officer. If you did it the way I did it, after I graduated and had my 4-year degree, then I was on a bus and then an airplane to San Antonio, Texas, to attend the officer training school program, which was another 3 months. And then at that point, I started my pilot training program, which was a year long. So basically that put me behind everybody else that went through the ROTC program by about 3 months. So it's important that if you eventually want to end up in the airlines, getting out as early as you can make a difference. So that's something to consider. But I have nothing but good things to say about the ROTC program. I think you learn a lot, and there are some advantages to it. So I would definitely look into it. I would seek advice from folks that went through the ROTC program at the school that you're considering going to. I would talk to recruiters, talk to more than one, because recruiters can end up giving you bad information, if you know what I mean. So you have to be careful about that. Do all the research you can about the program. But I think overall it's a good thing to do. So that's my advice. Okay. Continuing with Josh. Hey, Captain Jeff, enjoy your show. Keep up the good work. Let's see. You can add this to your show notes. A video recently came out on the internet of the crash in Aspen. Oh, yeah. Already talked about that at the beginning. Thanks, Josh. Patrick Chamberlain writes, Jessica, and this is from my Facebook page, and he writes, Jessica Cox, the first armless pilot, has been an inspiration to many pilots and aviation enthusiasts. Would you consider sharing her new documentary trailer on your Facebook page, or even talk about her efforts on your podcast? And yes to both. I can't remember if I said anything about this on the Facebook site or not, Patrick. If not, I will make sure that I change that and I share this YouTube video trailer and on the Facebook site, and I'll also share it right now on the website. I mean, on the show.
I remember that as a child, I always wanted to fly like Superwoman over my playground because I was so angry about how limited I was. When I was born, my mom was just devastated. You know, you envision your child to be perfect. You know, 10 fingers, 10 toes. She didn't know, what kind of life could I lead?
I was depressed. I don't want any visitors. I closed the curtain and I said, no, let me be by myself to think over what did I do wrong.
My mom was going to take care of me for the rest of my life. I knew that it would be hard for her to let me go. As a child, everyone had something I didn't have, and I knew that people reacted to me different. Having prosthetic arms, people called me Hook or Robot Girl. I struck out against that to prove that I could be as independent as anyone.
6 years old, I put her in a dance.
I remember the teacher announcing that we were going to have our dance recital on stage in front of all our family and friends, and I didn't want any part of that. And I was so nervous, all I could do was look down at my tap shoes. And then came the time when there was a first round of applause.
She wanted to dance in the back row. She didn't know if she even wanted to be in the recital or not. And by showtime, she was ready to dance. And I've seen such a wonderful change in her.
My entire life, I'd never met anyone with the same condition as me, but I remember seeing a TV piece about a woman. Her name was Barbara Guerra, and she was a young mom. She had a baby, she was changing the baby's diaper, and after that, I was a different person. It's really incredible how one person can be that difference for someone.
Jessica Cox.
When was the last time you said, I can't? How many of you said, I can't today? And guess what are the 2 words that I've eliminated from my vocabulary? I can't. I write with my toes. Did I drive a car with my feet? I use nunchucks with my feet. And actually, in about a month, I'm getting married. How many of you really believe that I fly an airplane without any arms?
Let me check how much we got in here.
That's good. It was 3 years of challenges, but because I had that drive and that desire, I knew that that was going to get me there. The first challenge I had in flight training, buckling up the harness. I actually stood up on the seat, buckled the harness first, loosened the straps, slipped in. Flying is the ultimate form of independence.
Okay, that is about a little more than half, maybe about 2/3 of the trailer on the Right-Footed, a documentary about Jessica Cox. And I'll have a link to that in the show notes, and you can visit the YouTube page and, of course, the website for Jessica Cox, the armless pilot. And it says the documentary is still in production. And to help complete it, please make a tax-deductible donation by visiting the site. So I'll have all that information on the show notes, and you can watch the rest of the trailer or rewatch the whole thing, because I think it has much more impact than just listening to the audio of it. So thank you, Patrick, for pointing that out, and hopefully I'll remember to share this on my Facebook page as well. Pretty amazing. You know, it's hard enough to fly an airplane when you have all your arms and your legs and hands and feet and all that kind of stuff, but to not have arms at all, no hands, no arms, it's pretty amazing. Quite an accomplishment. And we can learn a lot from Jessica Cox. Let's see. Tim writes, I'm a relative newbie to your podcast, and I'm enjoying finding out about you and your flying career, as well as all the darn cool things you talk about. My brother told me about your podcasts while I was visiting him and his family in the Outer Banks of North Carolina. As a matter of fact, we visited the Wright Brothers National Park and Kill Devil Hill while I was there, and I must admit that it was a goosebump city for me, as I have loved everything flying since I was young. I got a kick out of your podcast from Dayton, as you repeated often that it was the birthplace of flight. Those are fighting words in the Outer Banks, as they lay claim to the famous brothers and their incredible feat. The motto there is "First in Flight," and then he has a clip from Wikipedia about the rivalry between the states of Ohio and North Carolina, and their attribution of, who's right, where is the birthplace, who's first in flight, etc. And I think I may have mentioned this on that episode, that there was a vote in the U.S. House of Representatives that went 378-3 for a resolution naming Dayton, Ohio, the home of Wilbur and Orville Wright, as the place where aviation was born. There were 3 votes against the bill, and of course they were the votes from the North Carolina representatives, obviously. And so, yeah, I think there's probably going to be a fight for that for time immemorial. But needless to say, I think that both states can proudly make a claim that they had a lot to do with the Wright brothers and their historic flight at Kitty Hawk in the Outer Banks of North Carolina on December 17th, 1903. And let's see, he goes on to also mention in a recent episode of the business jet out of Mexico that had difficulty at Aspen, Colorado, and the tragic loss of life. And then he had some links of a Lear 60, or just one link, but I think after I looked at that one, there were several others of many business jets making approaches and landing into the airport in Aspen, Colorado, and how difficult it is. He goes on, I know some business jets that fly in there a lot, and they tell me it can be tricky. I live in wine country in Northern California and enjoy a nice full-bodied red wine. I think I will go tasting this weekend and see if I can find one that tastes like an IPA so you can make it around these parts. Can I share a glass with you? Hey, by the way, Tim, you don't have to find a wine that tastes like an IPA, because I love wine too, especially very full-bodied red wines. So I love the Cabernets. I love the Zinfandels. Any very strong, full-flavored red wine is fine with me. It doesn't have to be beer all the time, right? So thank you, sir, for that offer. I hope to enjoy a nice glass of Cabernet Sauvignon or something like that with you. in wine country, which is one of my favorite places in the world. I love it in Northern California. I know I'm going along on this one here. Hour and a half on the second half of this. That means I've been going for approximately 2.5 hours. Yikes. Sorry. I do want to make sure that I get to one of these things because it's kind of a clarification or update or helping me answer a question from a previous one. Let's see. Where did it go? Oh, First Officer Jake. Hideous First Officer Jake, he calls himself. Regarding the question, Airline Pilot Guy, episode number 101, what happens if a pilot screws up, then gets asked to resign or even fired? Answer, if the pilot does move on to another Part 121 airline, the previous airline must report all records, excluding sick time and other dependability issues, as per the Pilot Record Improvement Act, PRIA, of 1996. This applies to all U.S. Part 121 operators, and records must be kept for at least 5 to 10 years. This law is the result of several entry-level pilots, mostly at regional airlines, failing out of training, then moving on to another airline with an unreported history of poor performance. This law was passed in 1996 after several air crashes had occurred as a result of not having a reporting system. It now applies to all Part 121 airlines. Events accepted under an aviation safety program, action program, ASAP, which result in a letter of correction, are held on file for 24 months and then expunged from the pilot's FAA record, providing no further events occur. If a pilot moves on to another airline prior to the expiration of the 24 months of the accepted ASAP event, it is excluded from his or her PRIA report. I hope that helps. I only know this because in the last 10 years, I've gone from flight attendant at Northwest Airlines to a co-pilot at American Eagle Airlines to captain at Mesaba Airlines, which was then bought by Pinnacle Airlines, and now I'm a co-pilot at a major U.S. airline. So, last year when I interviewed at my current airline, I had to fill out 3 separate PRIA or PRIA request forms for each airline I worked at. Trust me, the forms are hideous and must be filled out and signed by the airman. God bless. And again, that is from Hideous First Officer Jake. And I'm quickly seeing if I still have that sound clip that I prepared just for Jake. Don't see it. Darn it. Oh, well. I'm going to have to make sure I have that available at all times, so when I get feedback from Hideous First Officer Jake, I can play it. Darn it. I don't see it. Yeah, you're not off the hook, Jake. He's hideous. Okay, thank you, sir, for helping me answer that. And just out of curiosity, I'm wondering to myself, remember the Colgan 3407, the crash of the Q400 in Buffalo, New York in 2009. I think it was 2009, where a lot of the recent progress and fatigue and new FAR 117 rules and other things were prompted by that crash, the Colgan air crash. Why is it that that captain somehow fell through the cracks? I mean, I think that he had a record of poor performance at previous airlines, check ride, unsatisfactory results of check rides, etc., from previous airlines. It seems to me in 1996 this was enacted. Why wasn't that system working? How is it that he still was able to get hired by Colgan and they didn't know about his previous performance? Kind of curious about that. Maybe you know the answer to that. And maybe it's an obvious one that I don't know, but that I don't recognize. But okay, well, you know what? I really should stop, even though I really want to answer more questions from you all. I see a bunch of them there from, let's see. This is from John and Luke, Dave, Brent, Gerardo, The Realist, etc. Many more. Alan, Anthony. Oh, this is interesting. Anthony, I'll just mention this very briefly. Anthony was looking at the Ottawa Aviation Services website. They focus on pilot training, and he said, didn't know if you knew this, they are making you famous or infamous. I would rather go with famous, Anthony, not infamous. And then he sent me a link to the OttawaAviationServices.com website, and they have a commercial pilot program, and they talk about their program and the fact that they have an old school philosophy with modern airplanes and modern avionics, which I love. And then at the end of their description of their commercial pilot program, they have a little thing that says Aviation Podcasts, and my podcast is listed, Airline Pilot Guy, along with the other great, or another great podcast, aviation podcast out there, Airplane Geeks. So very cool. Thank you, Ottawa Aviation Services, for putting that link on your web page. I do appreciate that. Okay, that's enough. So let's see. We talked about audibletrial.com/airline pilot guy for your free 30-day audio book trial. And also, just a reminder, my Brightline bag, flight gear bag, I'm showing it if you're watching the YouTube video, just knocked my glasses off, has been getting a lot of attention out there. Many airline pilots have been asking about it and requesting information about it. And of course, I've told them that, hey, go out to this site, Brightline Bags, I think that's the name of the website. It'll be in the show notes. And check out their flexible bag system. And if you order one, in the checkout, in the promo or discount code field, make sure you use the promo code Airline Pilot Guy, all one word, and you receive a 10% discount. So that, as far as I know, is still going on. So take advantage of that if you're in the market for a flight gear bag. I get you 10% off. And what else? That's about it, I think. Yeah, that's good. I think that'll do it for episode 102. And remember, you can head over to airlinepilotguy.com/coffee fund if you want to make a contribution. And if you want to send feedback, send it to feedback@airlinepilotguy.com. You can call my call-in line, 304-99-PILOT. That's 304-997-4568. Go to the website, airlinepilotguy.com/contact me, I think, where you can find the SpeakPipe tab on that page and use your computer's built-in microphone to send me an audio message if you like. Or you can do it the way a lot of my listeners do, and they just use their smartphone to record an audio snippet, and then they just attach it to the email and send it to feedback@airlinepilotguy.com. So you can figure out all those ways to contact me on the website. If you're watching the YouTube video right now, head over to airlinepilotguy.com and you'll see this episode and all the show notes there with all the links that I've talked about. Hopefully all the links that I've talked about on the show. And finally, Stitcher Radio, stitcher.com/airlinepilot. You can download your free Stitcher app for your smartphone and tablet device, and so many ways to listen to Stitcher Radio. It's the smart way to listen to radio. And until next time, wishing you a great week, clear skies, unlimited visibility, and tailwinds. Take care, and God bless.
Good day.